Look, I'm not gonna lie, I've been oscillating between nervous and excited since the first moment I heard they were bringing Daredevil into the MCU. And one moment you get this.
Now, do you think it's fair to say that Daredevil is the sluttiest superhero of the MCU?
And then you also get this.
Is the show set in the same universe as the Netflix show?
For sure.
100%.
Okay.
I'd consider it a fourth season.
But now that the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again have premiered, I have to say it's actually decent. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm still kind of holding my breath, but I want to talk about it. And yes, there will be spoilers. There's a concept in writing known as killing your darlings. It means that as a storyteller, you have to detach from your story and put your personal feelings aside to make the best narrative decisions possible. Killing your darlings could be nixing a line or cutting your favorite scene, or sometimes literally killing characters. So when Foggy Nelson is shot and killed in the first 15 minutes of Daredevil Born Again, that is exactly what I thought about. The original Netflix run of Daredevil is one of my favorite superhero shows of all time. It's a masterpiece and an intellectual crime drama wrapped up in superhero clothing. And it's a story that made me fall in love with the character of Daredevil and Matt Murdock. So as crazy as it sounds, I was kind of afraid of Daredevil Born Again. Not because of the actual story itself, but how that story might affect the legacy of the character that I've come to know and love. We've seen this happen time and time again, whether it be, Rings of Power, Star Wars, or Marvel. I mean, I will never forget the Book of Boba Fett. And it's the reason why, bringing Robert Downey Jr. back to play Doctor Doom is such a bad idea. But having seen the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again, it didn't do any damage, and in fact, I'm in. The characters, the story, the overall tone, well, not the same as the Netflix adaptation, are very compelling. This show is a genuine story from creators who respect the characters, the comics, and the original show. And while they are certainly making some bold choices with Foggy, Matt, and Fisk, I mean, at least this show has a pulse. Daredevil Born Again picks up pretty much where the last season left off. Matt, Karen, and Foggy have started their own firm and are cleaning up Hell's Kitchen, one pro bono case at a time. Of course, Matt's still Daredevil, so when Bullseye shows up to potentially assassinate one of their clients, Matt runs off to fight him, only to find that it was all a plan to assassinate his best friend, Foggy Nelson. Foggy! And look, I know it's controversial, but I think this was a masterful way to open the show. The acting, the cinematography, the action all working together to communicate a heartbreaking moment. Now, anyone who started with this show wouldn't really understand the significance of this death, but I was okay with that. I mean, Daredevil Born Again was a season 4, not a season 1, and the creators seemed to understand that. Actually, it was kind of both, which is why this whole meta reset Born Again narrative actually might work for this new show, but I'll get to that in a little bit. After Foggy's death, there's a year's time skip, where we see Matt is now practicing law with some of the most obnoxious side characters, just the opposite of charming or relatable. I mean, honestly, I'm really just talking about Kirsten.
He's not my boy, and Madison is rich, so we call him a savant.
She was kind of annoying and not played by the best actor, so dwarfed in comparison to somebody like Karen Page, who she clearly replaced as the show's main female presence. At this point in the narrative, we find out that Fisk is running for mayor of New York. Fisk and Vanessa are having problems, which feels a bit forced, and Matt, understandably, has his reservations. As much as he believes in redemption, he struggles to trust Fisk and resists the urge to take him down. Ultimately, Wilson Fisk wins the race and becomes mayor of New York. Now, because the pacing was so jumpy, the first episode did feel rushed. I appreciate that the show was working to establish a new normal with these characters while still staying consistent with what happened before, but still. And there were some really obvious scenes of exposition. Now, in doing more research, I found out that not only did they rewrite the whole, 18 episodes of the previous show into this new show, but they also had to work with a lot of the footage, I think like the first half of the show that had already been shot and kind of work it into this new vision and this new tone. So, I don't know, choppy editing or kind of awkward pacing is definitely understandable, but still an issue. My biggest complaint was that I wish they'd spent more time on Foggy's death. It was an incredibly compelling gamble, and I think the tragedy deserved more screen time, but I have a feeling the show will delve into that later on. Honestly, Daredevil Born Again really found its footing in episode 2, showing Fisk as he overtakes the city government and hinting at his darker side. Matt takes on a new pro bono client, the supposed culprit of a cop killing, who ends up being a street vigilante known as the White Tiger. And I have to say that this felt like old school Netflix Daredevil. I know people are complaining about Wilson Fisk being very similar to a certain US president. And while I must admit the connection crossed my mind, I kind of think people are reading into it. A well-written story is going to have parallels to real life. But as long as the creators are staying true to their narrative and their pre-established characters, I don't really have an issue with incidental parallelism. Also, there were comics that had Wilson Fisk running for mayor far before Donald Trump ever ran for president, so I'm not even really sure the source material was trying to do that. Overall, Daredevil Born Again is a good show. It's not great, but it's by far the best Marvel show Disney has ever made. It's respectful, but of course at the end of the day, not quite as good as the Netflix adaptation that came before. And I think that's the challenge that the show, its stars, and its creators have to deal with. Stepping out from the shadow of what came before. Which is why I actually loved them killing Foggy Nelson. I mean, I didn't love it. It was obviously awful and horrible, but I think it was a really good storytelling choice. It's not really killing your darlings in the traditional sense, because these are new creators dealing with old characters, but it's a great way to handle that transition. See, the whole MCU has been struggling since Endgame, and I think a large part of that has been expectations. Sure, there have been a fair share of bad stories with uninspired messaging, but if you look at projects like Captain America 4, its quality was not dissimilar to previous MCU films like Iron Man 2 or Thor: The Dark World. I think what killed it with the fans was the failure to deal with the past and to handle their expectations. So the creators of Daredevil Born Again seem to understand that, to understand the status quo they're inheriting. And instead of just closing their eyes and hoping for the best, they directly attacked the problem, both narratively and within the actual events of the show itself. Killing Foggy did what all stories should do in their openings: immediately establish the stakes and subvert our expectations just enough so that our remaining preconceptions about the show, the story, and the characters all fade away. Now we're just along for the ride, and that is the perfect place to begin a story, or, in this case, begin again. And where it suffered with elements like Fisk and Vanessa's relationship or Matt's new sidekicks, where it failed to do that. Instead of showing the narrative reasons behind these changes, they just kind of forced them on us and added expository conversations to fill in the gaps. These changes felt contrived, and of course, to add insult to injury, it was impossible to not compare them to the things that came before, and sort of how much we liked those things better. So if I had to summarize Daredevil Born Again so far, I would have to say it's refreshing. We're all familiar with what has become of the MCU, and for, I think, the first time, it seems like Feige and his team actually listened to the fans. They reset and put a team of true creatives in charge, not running from the past, but understanding the need to move on from it and avoiding any unnecessary nostalgia in the process. But as always, these are just my thoughts and opinions on the matter. I mean, I would love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you enjoying Daredevil Born Again? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Are you excited for the upcoming episodes? And if you did enjoy this video and you want to kind of hear my thoughts on other things going on in the Marvel world, feel free to check out my video here. And as always, keep reading, keep writing, and I will see you all in the next video.